Criminal matters, sometimes it's a very certain question that it's either a yes or a no. In other matters, it's not always necessarily a strict yes or no.
Now, in criminal matters where you were asked to conduct these independent evaluations, how do you approach it? What kind of information do you seek, or would you prefer to have in order to conduct the evaluation?
Well, generally one starts with the statute and then tries to gather or review what information exists to understand the mental state of the person, if that's pertaining to the particular statutory question, and to understand the mental history and the mental state of the individual, and to see if that can be applied to the questions at hand.
And so what types of records are you generally looking at when conducting a forensic evaluation for something like criminal responsibility?
Well, one would certainly want to review psychiatric records if they exist. Ideally also to have examined the individual and to gather information, not only historical information from the individual, but to do, in that sense, an examination in real time. And that provides you the information, what we call a mental status examination.
Okay.
Other records are also important: medical records, educational records, and other records that describe the individual.
And when we're talking about a criminal case, fair to say you review the entire criminal file too, right?
Yes.
And when you're doing these evaluations and creating a database of this particular information, are there any limitations to your opinion or evaluation?
I'm not sure how you mean that.
Well, when you have these evaluations that you're conducting, namely for criminal responsibility, do those evaluations, are they limited based on the information that you have? Meaning, if you don't have everything at the time you do your evaluation, is there kind of a caveat to your opinion?
Well, when I write an opinion or state an opinion, it is based on the totality of the information that I have. If additional information comes along, I am open to receiving that and integrating that into my understanding of the totality.
Now, when you interview the individual in these evaluations, the purpose of the interview or purpose of your contact with them is not to provide treatment, correct?
Correct.
And the opinion that you reach ultimately is based on the defendant's mental state, correct?
To the extent that impacts the question, yes.
Okay. Well, when we're talking about criminal responsibility, you'd agree that's kind of the central issue, is the person's mental state at the time of the alleged offense, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So in Massachusetts here, with the question of criminal responsibility, are you aware of what the standard is?
Yes.
And what is it?
Well, it uses particular language based on the common concept throughout the country called the McNaughton standard. And I could read to you the specifics of the language, but effectively it refers to two pieces. Well, actually starts with three. One is, did the person have a mental disorder at the time of the event? And then secondly, the two prongs speak to specifics about the mental state at the time. One being, and I would want to refer to the actual statute.
Well, if we can, maybe we break that down for the jury.
Yeah.
So the first part of this for criminal responsibility is the question of, does the person suffer from a mental disease or defect, correct?
Correct.
Objection to the leading. Let's see if he knows.
Yeah, if you just ask him.
I can rephrase
He's aware, and if you want to refresh his memory, you can.
Well, you've already testified the first part of the analysis, and I think you used the terminology mental disorder.
Yes, right? I did.
And you're aware that a mental disorder is a clinical term.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I apologize. What was that?
A mental disorder is a clinical term. The terminology mental disease or defect, are you aware that's a legal term?
Okay.
Okay. Well, so when you are conducting evaluations for criminal responsibility.
Is that an answer?
Yes.
Said,
I'm
okay.
sorry. Yes.
Yeah, all right.
When you're conducting an evaluation for criminal responsibility and you're trying to determine whether a person suffers from a mental disease or defect, do you look to mental disorders to see if that meets criteria?
I would evaluate if the person has ever had a psychiatric or a mental disorder.
And what kinds of tools do you have available to you to do that?
Well, there are two tools. One is gathering of historical information, and the other is the information you gather from actually seeing the person face to face.
And as a psychiatrist, that's something you do in your clinical practice all the time, right?
Correct.
Because one of the main things you're going to do is look to try to diagnose an individual.
Correct.
And so how do you go about determining that if a person has a mental disorder?
In psychiatry, we make diagnoses in a descriptive manner. We look to see ways in which the individual has symptoms or signs of mental disorders or mental defects or psychiatric disorders. So in particular, one will start with trying to gather as much information as possible about what are the things that bother the individual. That may be their mood, that might be things that they get anxious about, that may be abnormal movements that they make. And that will also be aligned with understanding their medical condition, any medications that they take, any substances that they use. There's an array of information, sets of information that one gathers in that portion where you ask questions. But effectively, you're asking questions about symptoms. And one is trying to understand not just symptoms, but the degree of impairment that symptoms might be causing an individual.
And do you work with any sort of tools that help you identify particular characteristics of symptoms associated with disorders in your field?
Well, at times, individuals use scales or tests, which can be psychological tests or scales that ask particular questions. Or other times, you might use tests that are biological tests, like the person's brain waves, called an EEG, or laboratory tests.
When you're talking about diagnosing an individual for any particular mental disorder, are there specific criteria for different types of disorders?
Yes, there are.
And is there a source that you use as a psychiatrist in order to identify the criteria for different disorders?
We use a text called the DSM, otherwise known as the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. It's currently in its 5th edition, or actually a revision was made of its 5th edition. And so that text, which is created and vetted by a large number of professionals, provides criteria for the different disorders, and these are known as operational criteria. In psychiatry, there aren't necessarily gold standards that you can use for diagnosis, like finding a bacterium or finding an anatomical tissue. So for the last 60 years, 70 years, psychiatry has turned to agreed upon definitions that are listed in the DSM.
Okay. And you said it's not the end all be all, right, of diagnosing. You use your training and experience as well, but it's a tool that you use.
Well, it is they are the criteria that one uses to make the diagnosis. It is not a guidebook for how to gather that information. It's not a how-to, but it is the standard.
Okay. So now going back to the legal standard here in Massachusetts, so one part is the disorder, right? And you said there's a second part.
Right. So the second part are particular criteria about the person's state at the time of the event. So one of them is they both utilize the verb to have retained, retained substantial capacity to know that the act was wrong or against the law, and the other being retain substantial capacity to control or conform one's behaviors to the law.
And so when you're talking about criminal responsibility here in Massachusetts, is it fair to say you're looking at the person's conduct and their condition at the time of the offense?
That's right.
And the information that you're gathering in this overall evaluation, getting history and kind of looking at the person as a whole, is that helpful to understand the person's diagnosis when you're being asked this particular question?
Yes,
But ultimately, you're rendering an opinion of the person at the time of the offense.
that's correct.
So in this particular case, you were provided a series of records and information regarding the defendant, Lindsay Clancy, correct?
Yes.
And can you just give us a general overview of the sources of information you had available to you?
Generally speaking, there was the criminal file, as you mentioned before. And then in terms of medical or psychiatric records, there was the records from the hospital that she's at right now, the hospital that she was at right before, called Spalding, the hospital that she was at before that, which was Brigham and Women's. In addition, there was the medical records from outpatient treaters, and there was also the records from her admission to McLean Hospital. So overall, there were outpatient records, there were inpatient records. For the most part, those all correlated with her own care. Additionally, we received the pediatric records for some of the victims in this matter. And as I mentioned before, the criminal file.
Okay. And in addition to the records related to the defendant herself, we also provided some other reports to review.
I was.
By other psychiatrists and psychologists?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that one of the things that's useful in these evaluations is an interview with the person themselves, right?
Yes.
And did you engage in an interview with the defendant?
I did.
And when did that occur?
I interviewed her on April 10th and April 12th of this year.
And that's of this year in 2026?
Correct.
And what were your observations of her when you first met with her on April 10th? Can you describe her demeanor?
Generally, she was friendly and cooperative.
When you begin an interview with an individual that you're evaluating, do you conduct what's referred to as a mental status exam?
Well, the mental status exam happens all the while that you're interacting with somebody. You're always observing for aspects of their emotions, how they speak, their mood, and so forth. Sometimes there are directed aspects of the mental status examination where you are asking about particular cognitive capacities like executive functioning and attention and concentration. But the gathering of information about the person's mood, for example, or their thought process, that happens throughout the entire portion.
Okay, and so over the course of the time that you met with the defendant, were you able to make observations of, for instance, whether she maintained eye contact with you when speaking?
Right, so she did maintain eye contact.
Okay. What about her emotional state?
So overall, if we go through the various components, like what's called her affect, which is her emotional expression or her mood, generally speaking, there were not many abnormalities in her presentation, and I can go through them. They include the way in which she speaks, that is to say the rapidity of speech, if the speech is made in sort of regular intervals between words. In terms of thought, does the person, and in this case did Ms. Clancy, make goal-directed ideas? Mm-hmm. Was there a particular content of the ideas? So generally speaking, for all the components of the mental status examination, there were not really abnormalities. I would say at some points she seemed distressed by some topics. I believe tearful at one point, but otherwise nothing remarkable on mental status examination.
Okay. And in these evaluations, when you're interviewing the individuals, are you also kind of taking account of their physical presentation?
Yes.
And obviously, when you met with her in April of 2026, you were able to observe her physical condition, right?
Yes.
And what were your observations of her physical condition?
Well, she's utilizing a wheelchair. Generally speaking, there were not necessarily abnormal movements that I observed. She seemed comfortable physically. And
Did you find that she was able to kind of navigate her situation herself? Meaning you were in a room with her with other individuals, right?
yes.
And she was able to kind of take care of her own.
I'm going to object leading at this point, just as they object.
Sustained, if you just ask the observations.
What did you observe her do as far as moving herself around the room? Was she able to do that?
Yes, at the moments when there were transitions, when we took a break and she went out to the hall, she was able to navigate her wheelchair one place or another.
And when you spoke with her on April 10th and April 12th, were you able to kind of have a conversation with her about her level of functioning?
Hey, all persons having anything to do before the Honorable William Sullivan, Justice of the Superior Court, now sitting at Plymouth, within and for the Commonwealth. Draw near and give your attendance, and you shall be heard. Long save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This court is now in session. Please be seated.
Good morning, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, please.
Your Honor, before the court today, we have the continuation of the jury trial in the matter of Commonwealth versus Lindsay Clancy. Ms. Clancy is present. She is represented by Attorney Kevin Reddington. The Commonwealth is represented by Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Sprague and Assistant District Attorney Shannon Buckingham.
All right, well, thank you, Madam Clerk. Good morning, members of the jury. Good morning. I hope everybody had a nice weekend. And so what we're going to do, as we have done so many times before, I'm going to ask you those questions, and then we're kind of going to go over what today's schedule is, and then we'll get right back to the trial. So the first question: has any member of the jury read, seen, heard, or overheard anything from any source about any aspect of this case that would affect your ability to be a fair and impartial juror? All right. Last question: is there any other serious matter of concern bearing on your service as a juror in this case that anybody needs to bring to my attention at this time? Again, thank you so much for following those instructions. What we are going to do from the schedule today, if you remember on Friday, we were during cross-examination of Dr. Mack, who had testified Friday afternoon. We're going to return to the cross-examination, and the only difference is Dr. Mack is going to be available by Zoom here. We've had a couple other witnesses, so you all kind of know how that's going to work. So we're going to finish the cross-examination of Dr. Mack by Zoom. Commonwealth, if they have redirect question, and then we're going to continue with the Commonwealth's rebuttal. All right, and so just to kind of go back as far as the procedures that we followed, so the Commonwealth presented their case. Then after they were done, the defendant presented their case, and we're now on to the Commonwealth's rebuttal. All right, and when the Commonwealth's rebuttal is done, we're going to move to the next portion of the procedure process, which will be the closing arguments and the legal instructions. All right, so that comes after the Commonwealth's rebuttal witnesses. So that's kind of where we are at this point. And so as we go through today, I'll kind of keep you up to date in regards to the schedule for going forward. All right, so that's where we are. So at this point, I'm going to, we'll get Dr. Mack on the screen, and then it'll be Mr. Reddington continuing cross-examination. Yeah, please.
Dr. Mack, would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony and the evidence you shall give to the court and the jury in the matter now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant at the bar shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Attorney Reddington.
Thank you. Sir, how many times have you testified in courts on the issue of criminal responsibility?
I would estimate 1 or 2.
So if you estimate 1 or 2 times, would this be your 3rd time?
By that estimation, yes.
Okay, so it's not by my estimation, though, it's by your estimation, and you would know better than me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the third time in your career that you've testified on a criminal trial on the issue of lack of criminal responsibility. Is that correct?
I know there are other times that I've created opinions.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm not sure how many.
I'm just asking about criminal responsibility. That's it.
I'm talking about criminal responsibility. And I know there are other times I've created opinions, but I'm not sure that I've testified about them
Okay.
in the courtroom.
So my question was simply, how many times have you testified in court on criminal cases regarding the issue of lack of criminal responsibility, and this would be your third time, right?
That is my recollection.
Okay. And you have testified in court on behalf of various governmental agencies on other matters in addition to criminal responsibility, correct?
Yes.
And you are operating under the umbrella, if you will, of the Park Dietz conglomerate of a lot of expert witnesses that, as I understand, would parcel out cases to different people. Is that right?
There are times that I do cases through Park Dietz and Associates. I can't speak to how many experts they have and exactly how they, as you put it, parcel things out. But over the span of my career, there have been times that I've done it when cases have been presented through Park Dietz and Associates, and times that I've done it through other entities. As I discussed the other day, I had a role for the state of Maryland, and at times, and in this case, there was a criminal responsibility trial that I was a part of when I had a role for the state of Maryland. So going throughout my career, it's been multiple different entities.
You've also testified, since we're talking about it, in the state of Pennsylvania, right?
What's your question?
You've also testified, since we're talking about it, in the state of Pennsylvania, right?
I believe I have.
Was that at Park Dietz, or was that you individually, or one of your other entities?
You'd have to specify which case.
Commonwealth versus Torres, 342 MAL 2021, Pennsylvania.
Can you cite that case again, please?
Sure. Commonwealth versus Torres, 342 MAL 2021, Pennsylvania, where the court held that that would be Abram Mack, was apparently certified only in child and adolescent psychiatry. You lacked forensic certification to testify in the field that you were ostensibly going to testify in. Does that refresh your memory?
No.
Did you testify? Did you testify in Commonwealth versus Torres in Pennsylvania?
I don't remember.
How about Commonwealth versus Carter in New Jersey? You remember that one?
No.
Do you recall that the court held on an appeal that you used an approach that fell below the standard of forensic practice?
No.
How about Feder LeBron versus the Secretary of DCF, 710 Fed 3rd, 1202 in Florida? You remember that case, I'm sure, right?
I do.
And in Feder, there was a gentleman, Mr. Feder LeBron, who was a Navy veteran, who was a single father and had a child. And he was a member or a person that was able to get benefits from what's called TANF, T-A-N-F, Temporary Aid to Needy Families. You remember that?
I do.
And the state of Florida decided that because needy families consisted of either minorities or drug users or people that would not be reliable to work in the confines of working underneath the TANF, so they wanted to have blood testing and drug testing of all the people that were temporary aid to needy families, right?
That's your conception of what was happening with that.
Well, that's my conception from reading the case, sir. Do you agree, sir, that TANF is an acronym for Temporary Aid to Needy Families?
Yes, it is.
Do you agree, sir, that this gentleman, Mr. Feder LeBron, was a plaintiff in a lawsuit against the state of Florida?
Yes.
Do you agree, sir, that it was in federal court?
Yes.
You agree, sir, that in federal court, the court held that, in fact, you were unqualified to give an opinion that you attempted to give, saying that it was perfectly appropriate to test by way of urine or blood people that are benefiting from the TANF program, because your testimony was that they belong to a class of people that, I guess, had to be tested. Right?
I don't agree with your conceptualization.
Okay. So the court ultimately ruled that your argument, your testimony on behalf of the state of Florida, the government, and you indicated that TANF benefits, applicants for TANF were people that were involved with drug use, violence, and higher rates of suicide. Remember those words, those three words?
The testimony that I provided.
Do you remember testifying, sir, about the people that are the beneficiaries of the TANF program, people that need aid because of needy families, are people that should be tested by way of blood or urine? And your argument, sir, was because they are of a class that would be more likely to commit a crime or have suicide or drug use. Did you testify to that?
That is not the way that that testimony or that report was presented. No,
okay,
I disagree.
So your answer is no. Let's keep it that way. Your answer is no. So you recall, sir, that there was an appeal, and in fact, on the appeal, it was determined that, again, yet again, you were not qualified to offer a relevant opinion because, number one, you never studied the TANF population. Recall that?
No, that is not the correct conceptualization.
Says you. Number two, that you did not survey any data. Recall that, sir?
Specifically in Florida is the nuance on that issue.
And number three, that you had no research whatsoever on the data that you based your opinion on. Would you agree with that, sir?
No.
Do you agree, sir, that the court held that you relied on other researchers' studies and didn't make any effort whatsoever to form an opinion based on your own research? Do you agree with that?
I don't remember the specific language of the court.
All right. Do you recall that ultimately your testimony was stricken?
No, I don't believe that it was stricken.
Okay. In any event, sir, you would agree with me that you have a memory of Avram Mack being subject to this attack, if you will, by the attorneys on behalf of the people that were involved with TANF, right? You remember that much, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Thank you. Now, in summary, sir, you're here to testify in front of this jury regarding your testimony and opinion that you've given regarding Lindsay Clancy's state of mind at the time of the killing of her children. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you evaluated her in 2026. Is that right?
Yes.
So you really evaluated her about 3 years after the incident that occurred in January 22, right?
January 2023.
So you do recall the date that the incident occurred, 23, right?
Right. So to answer
Okay,
your
the answer is right.
Yeah.
Okay. And in reference to your answer, sir, you would agree with me that there was a significant passage of time between the incident in 2023 and when you saw her about 2 or 3 months ago, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you drove out there with the guy that's going to be in here testifying in about an hour or so, Helbrun. Is it Helbrun or Heilbrun?
When you say that I drove out there,
I'm just asking the guy's name. Is it Helbrun or Heilbrun?
you'll have to ask him how he likes to pronounce it.
Well, did you know how to call him or what to call him when you were out there with him for 2 days at Tewksbury?
Kirk.
Kirk, okay. And you met Kirk, I imagine, that morning that you were going to evaluate Lindsay?
Yes.
And what was the date that you evaluated her? Was it February date?
I think the first date was April 10th.
Okay.
The second date was April 12th. And those were the 2 days that I was there.
Right, because Kirk had to give her psychological testing on the middle day, right?
Correct.
Okay, so did you stay in a hotel or a van, or where'd you stay?
You're asking me where I stayed?
Yeah, I don't want to meet up. I just want to know where you stayed.
I stayed in Massachusetts.
Where?
I believe in Wellesley.
Where? Was it like Holiday Inn? Was it a Ritz-Carlton? Where?
A private home.
A private home, okay. Kirk didn't stay there, did he?
I don't know.
You don't
No,
know?
he didn't stay there. He didn't stay there, that's for sure.
Okay. So in any event, you must have had plans to meet up with Kirk at Tewksbury Hospital, right?
I did meet Dr. Halpern at Tewksbury Hospital, yes.
Okay, I'm calling him Kirk because that's what you told me is that you refer to him as. But it's Dr. Hoffman, how do you pronounce it?
I believe it's Halpern, but you'll have to ask him how he prefers it.
Okay, I will. And then did you meet him in the parking lot of Tewksbury?
Yes, I think that's right.
And
Or in
you
the
had,
lobby.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Or in the lobby.
Okay. So when you went there on that date in April, the first day, you already had your information that you were able to form your opinion based upon. Is that right?
At the time that I initiated the examination, I had reviewed records related to Ms. Clancy, but creation of the ultimate opinion.
No. I'm asking about the records, sir. Real simple. The records that you reviewed. You had already reviewed them before you went to Tewksbury Hospital. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And the records would be, obviously, cell phone extraction records, yes?
I don't know exactly when I reviewed those cell phone records.
How about defense expert forensic psychiatric evaluations? Dr. Philip Resnick, Dr. Margaret Spinelli, you reviewed the reports that were already prepared by my experts. Is that correct?
And also Dr. Zeisel.
Zeisel, yeah, thank you. Okay, because I had sent them to you, isn't that right?
You had sent them, I believe, to Dr. Heilbronn.
To Dr. who? I'm sorry.
I think Dr. Kirk Heilbronn. And I think he was able to give them to me.
Okay, fine. So you also were able to review Division or Department of Children and Family Records dated February 3rd of 2023, correct?
Correct.
And those would be records that pertained, obviously, after the death of the children, but it was just an interview of Patrick, the father, and Lindsay's husband, right? That's what those were.
That was a substantial component of that, but that was the DCF evaluation that occurred, and they, I believe, interviewed him when he was at Boston Children's Hospital.
Okay, all I'm asking is that the DCF, in other words, there's no DCF records that shows that Lindsay was abusive to her children, right?
I don't think that that was necessarily the conclusion of that report.
Well, it wasn't the conclusion of any report. There were no other reports other than February 3rd, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and that would be interviewing Pat, the father and the husband, right?
As I said, I think effectively that is the core component of that report.
Okay, that's the component of the report. The answer is yes. You also had medical records from Astor Mental Health Records, right?
Yes.
That would be Jennifer Tufts?
Yes.
Jennifer McAllister, right?
I'm not sure if that's the name of another doctor in that practice, but substantially Astor Mental Health included the work of Dr. Tufts.
Dr. Tufts. And how about nurse practitioner Gelada? Did you review her records as well?
The records of hers that came from the organization that she worked in, yes.
What organization was that, do you know?
I'm not exactly recalling the title of it, but I believe it's South Shore mental health, but I'm not exactly sure of the exact title.
Boston Children's Hospital, Brigham and Women's Hospital, and McLean Hospital records. You reviewed them, correct?
Yes.
Spalding Rehab, right?
Yep.
Tewksbury Hospital from March 27th of 23 up through April 1st of 26, which is a little bit before you saw Lindsay, right?
Correct.
They were about 7,000 pages, a lot of paper, right?
Yes.
Toxicology records, police reports, grand jury testimony, you read all that too, right?
Correct.
Police interviews of witnesses, right?
Correct.
And you had met with, I imagine, or spoken to, by telephone perhaps, with the district attorneys, the prosecutors here.
Yes.
And where did you meet them?
The prosecutors?
Yeah.
Only by phone.
Okay, so you met them by phone. When was that?
I don't know offhand when that was.
How long was the conversation?
I don't recall. It could have been somewhere between 15 minutes to 45 minutes.
And basically they told you that they wanted you to evaluate a defendant who had been indicted for triple homicide of her own children by the name of Lindsay Clancy. You knew that from speaking with them, right?
Effectively, I knew that, yes.
And, you know, I normally don't go there with expert witnesses, but it was fair game on Dr. Zeisel. How much money do you make a year on your forensic evaluations?
It ranges over the years, several $100,000.
Yeah.
Can be a few.
And a lot of that,
more.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So a lot of that would be appointed cases or cases either from Park Dietz or some other warehouse that asks you to evaluate people and testify in the court, right?
Or over the years, people contact me directly.
Really?
We're talking about over the last 15 to 20 years.
Right. So when you were contacted by, strike that, did the DAs here call you or did you call them?
I don't recall.
Do you recall that they told you what a horrible case this was, that this woman killed her 3 children by strangling them? Did they tell you that?
Sustained. Next question.
Well, did you know what the factual allegations were of the case? Yes or no?
Well, all the factual allegations, yes, I believe they were conveyed to me during a phone call.
Yeah. Okay. And when you were engaged or retained through Park Dietz and Associates to work for the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office, I mean, that's fair to say. You were working for them, right?
Effectively, I was retained by the District Attorney's Office, yes.
All right. And let's talk about confirmatory bias. You know what that is?
Well, you were asking me the other day about the cognitive bias think tank, and we talked about how, as a part of my work in patient safety.
No. This is Doctor.
I would like to deal
Hold on, Doctor, please. Listen to the question and answer the question. Go ahead.
This is confirmatory bias, sir, not a think tank talking about safety of anybody, okay? Confirmatory bias. Have you heard of that term?
I have.
And what does it mean?
Well, if you're talking about the work in diagnosis in medicine, as I was getting at before, it refers to the idea that an individual has an idea as to what they're aiming for, and they gather information that accedes to that and that brings that point together.
Okay. So would you agree with me, sir, that when you are retained in your practice, working whether it's for Dietz or somebody else, and you are engaged by a prosecutor, such as the Plymouth County DA's office, is it fair to say that you go into your work and your evaluation, and I hesitate to use the word investigation, but you have a confirmatory bias? You're hoping that you're going to be able to help them out, right?
No.
No. Okay. So you had read all this material, you had spoken with the prosecutors, and I imagine you had done a team back with Kirk Heilbrunn, right?
A what?
You talked to Kirk Heilbrunn about the fact that you guys were going to go in and evaluate Lindsay, right?
We had worked with the prosecutors, and I believe them with you.
No, you didn't. Excuse me. You didn't work with me. What do you mean? You didn't work with me.
I imagine there was interactions in terms of setting up the dates on which this would occur.
I had nothing to do with it. My office manager, Laura Mather, would have done that. I had nothing to do with it, sir.
Yeah, okay, next question.
So when you went out there on the 2 days that you went out, forget the middle day, because that's when Kurt was by himself. When you went out there, the two of you met in the parking lot or the lobby, one or the other, correct?
Yes.
Yes?
I said yes.
And the purpose was to go interview her, right?
Ms. Clancy, yes.
So you guys go down the hallway, you go in the elevator, you go upstairs to the locked wards, they have to open the door, they have orderlies and people that escort you. Is that right?
Yes.
You have to sign in, you have to have ID because it's a locked ward, right?
Effectively, yes.
Effectively. And the two of you, you and Kirk, go into a room where she's sitting in her wheelchair by herself so that you two of you can interview her. Is that correct?
Yes.
For how many hours did you interview her the first time?
First day, it was roughly ended up being about, I think, 4 or 5 hours.
And have in mind, sir, as counsel has already elicited, she's incontinent. She has issues because of being paralyzed and had to have a break, didn't she?
She did not ask for a break.
Oh, she was able to power through the 4 hours?
I don't know if that's the appropriate way to frame it. We took a break. During the interview, we discussed the schedule that she has for catheterization, if that's your question.
So you and Kirk Heilbrunn sat down and you questioned Lindsay, the both of you together or one at a time, or how'd that work out?
One would ask questions, and if another one had additional questions to ask about that particular topic, then the other would ask.
And she was, fair to say, she was pretty cooperative with you guys, right?
Yes.
She was polite, she was affable, right?
Yes.
She answered your questions, right?
Yes.
And then when you concluded that first day, then the next day, Kurt Heilbrunn went on his own to Tewksbury and had another multi-hour interrogation, questioning, or whatever of Lindsay, right?
He was there for a second day for psychological testing.
So you're aware of the fact that he was there for psychological testing, right?
Yes.
Now, a psychiatrist doesn't do psychological testing. The psychologist does, right?
Typically, that's true.
And there are a number of tests that are administered to people when they are being evaluated for purposes of a criminal case such as this, right?
There is a number of different tests that test different aspects of an individual's psychiatric or psychologic or cognitive functioning.
Right. Like, for example, you want to determine, I would imagine, whether or not they're lying or exaggerating or minimizing their symptoms, right?
That's always an interest, yes.
And it's of interest because if a person is, in fact, masking or lying about their mind, trying to fake out an evaluating forensic psychiatrist or psychologist, when you say that's of interest, that's something that can be a test result that a jury could look at, right?
Well, I'm not sure if there's a test that specifically states a person is lying.
No. You ever heard of the MMPA?
I have.
Okay. You ever heard of the K scale?
Yes.
What is that?
Well, the K scale is among the internal validity scales of the MMPI. The
Okay.
MMPI is an assessment of the individual's personality.
Okay. So let's focus on the K scale, sir. When you say that it's a, let me ask you again, what is your understanding of what the K scale is seeking to find out?
I answer this in the context of the purpose of the MMPI and what the MMPI is designed.
What are you smiling for? This is not funny, sir.
Sustained. Next
Well,
question.
you know-
Next question.
MMPI, K scale, focus. What does it mean, sir?
So the MMPI is an assessment of personality, and it is a set of questions that the individual responds to provide the